Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I have recently been finding myself reading a lot of books that are part of series, or they're the beginning of the series, or I didn't realize they were a series, and now I feel invested in reading them, or they're the conclusions to a trilogy, like many books that are all around the idea of a series. And I say this pretty often on my channel, but I am not a fan of series. I'm not a fan of short story collections either, for similar reasons, but I thought I would make a video on exactly why I don't like reading series and kind of give some examples of what I've been reading recently and whether I think it's worth going down and taking that series plunge. I have a love-hate relationship with series for many different reasons, but the largest part of it is I just don't like having to read that much of a story, especially the ones that are multiple volumes, and hoping that all of the books will be of the same caliber as if it was just a standalone novel. That's the big thing for me. I've definitely had some series in the past that I really loved. One of the series that actually got me into reading and got me into horror lit is Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. I read every single one of those books. I was always there at my school book fair to pick up the new release. The second it would come out, I would devour it. I loved that series. And I loved the Harry Potter series. I loved a lot of series as a kid growing up and being with certain characters. But as I've gotten older, I have found series to be more and more tedious. So I'm going to go through, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 books right here that are all part of series that I am reading or have read. And I'm going to talk about why some of those books really work for me and some of those books don't. And just kind of expanding upon why I have an issue with series and always tend to prefer standalone novels instead. So first up, let's talk about Brier Dark by S.A. Harrian. So I received this in one of my first Nightworms package, no, not Nightworms, Twisted Retreat. This is a Twisted Retreat limited edition. This book is so gorgeous. I love everything about it. It's just absolutely beautiful. And when I was reading it, I didn't realize that it was a start of a series. I'm going to read the inside flap for you guys really quickly in case you haven't heard of this. So it says, for Dr. Sienna DuPont and her ambitious team, the Alpenglow Glacier expedition is a career-defining opportunity. But 30 miles into the desolate Dead Switch wilderness, they discover a missing hiker dangling from a tree, and their satellite phone fails to call out. Then the body vanishes without a trace. The disappearance isn't the only chilling anomaly. Sienna's map no longer aligns with the trail. The glacier they were supposed to study has inexplicably melted. Strange foliage overruns the mountainside, and a tunnel within a tree hollow lures Sienna to a hidden cabin and a stranger with a sinister message. Holden Sharp's IT job offers little distraction from his wasted potential, till he stumbles upon a decommissioned hard drive and an old audio file. Trapped on a mountain, Dr. Sienna DuPont recounts an expedition in chaos and the bloody death of a colleague. Entranced by the mystery, Holden searches for answers to Sienna's fate, but he is unprepared for the truth that will draw him to the outskirts of Dead Switch Wilderness, a place teeming with unfathomable nightmares and impossibilities. I was so invested in this story, and I wanted to understand what was happening. I loved the atmosphere, I loved the characters, I loved the mystery, I loved the kind of interdimensional world that was being created. But what I didn't like is that our two major storylines really don't intersect until very close to the end of the novel, and it's ended on a cliffhanger. You get literally no answers whatsoever, which is okay if you knew that going into a series it was a series and this was book 1, and this is an excellent book 1. I am still on the edge of my seat waiting to know what happens, and yet to this day I don't know when the sequel is coming out. I read this I think over a year ago, and I'm going to check Goodreads right now, but I still don't know if I'm ever getting a sequel. I know that Goodreads had like something listed, but there's no release date, there's no updates that I've seen. I'm just like in the dark waiting for the next book in Brier Dark. And is it a duology? Is it a trilogy? Is it going to be a full-length fantasy horror series? I don't know. So as of right now, it says that Waywarden. So as of right now, it looks like book 2 has just come out. It came out last month on July 15th. I have no idea how I did not hear about this because I have been literally dying to figure out when the sequel is coming out. So I have to pick that up, it looks like. But it's also looking like there is a third book in the series now, according to Goodreads. There's going to be a third book called Brood Mother. So now I am just probably completely invested in this because I need to know everything that was happening for it. And I'm trying to just maintain all of the memory of characters and everything because I don't really have time to be rereading books. So when I have to wait years in between the releases of different installments and series, it makes it really, really difficult for me to remember everything. Another book that I'm having the same problem with is The X-Hex by Erin Sterling. I love this series. I didn't realize it was a series when I got it. I think it was actually originally written to be a standalone, and I'm pretty certain that if you were to just read this and then the Kiss Curse, which is book number 2, that you could probably read them as standalones. And I was very, very happy with book 2 in this series because it actually highlighted 2 of my favorite characters in book 1 and made them center stage, and they were just awesome. And I actually thought the second book was stronger. But now I'm sitting here waiting for book 3 that has been delayed like a whole year. So it's going to be 2 years removed from the release of book 2 in this, and the book 1 and book 2 were only released, I think, a year apart. And I read The X-Hex like 6 months before book 2 came out, so I really didn't feel that much of a waiting period. But now I am still waiting. It has still not been released to my knowledge. We will see when exactly book 3 is coming out. Yes, book 3 will finally be released on October 15th of 2024. So I am still sitting here waiting for The Wedding Witch to come out. I don't know if it's the conclusion. I don't know if it's also going to kind of feel like a standalone because it's going to be focusing again on kind of like a Bridgerton style where it's like a different couple every single book. But I've been waiting forever. If you haven't read The X-Hex, it's kind of like rom-com with horror thrown in. I always think of it as like kind of like adult Halloween Town. But you follow the warlocks in the Penhallow family as they fall in love with various witches, basically, is kind of the premise. It's very cute. It's very spooky. It's like perfect for all spooky season. I just absolutely adore these books. I think book 3 is going to take place around Christmas. The other 2 took place more around like Halloween. But I love these books. They're fun. They're my palate cleanser books, and I have now been waiting for 2 years, and I, again, don't love series. So if it's a good enough series that I'm like pumped for it, I don't want to have to wait 2 years for the next installment. That drives me crazy. Even if it's going to be worth the wait, sometimes it's not. And for series where it's not worth the wait, you get something like My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is book 1 in the Indian Lake trilogy. This is probably the most famous thing Stephen Graham Jones has written thus far. I am not a Stephen Graham Jones fan. I actually talk about this quite often on my channel. In fact, what I'm saying right now, I say all the time on my channel. This is the book that made me a Stephen Graham Jones fan. I was so invested in this. This is the story of a girl named Jade Daniels. She's obsessed with slasher films, especially those from the 70s and 80s, and she uses her knowledge of slasher movies to basically help navigate a real-life slasher in her small town of Proof Rock, Idaho. It's fantastic. It is so cool. It is so campy. It is so weird. It is so different than most of the stuff that Stephen Graham Jones writes. And it was originally written to be a standalone. It kind of ended on like a weird cliffhanger that opened it up for a second book. And then he wrote the second book. I put off reading it because I was so worried I was going to be disappointed in it, because again, I'm not a big Stephen Graham Jones fan outside of My Heart is a Chainsaw. Finally read it, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a perfect complementary story to follow up My Heart is a Chainsaw and just continue Jade's legacy. And then it also kind of ends very open-endedly with some of the bad guys in book 2, and I was very excited for book 3 because I was like, oh my god, I really want to know what's happening. Like, he really is releasing them just like year after year after year. I really want to know what's happening. And then I got to book 3, and you could tell that his heart wasn't in it. I didn't understand who any of the characters were. I didn't remember half of the characters. So many new characters were introduced. There was so much lore, and just nothing was explained, and it didn't aid the reader in any way unless you had literally just read all 3 books back to back to back. And I hated that. It made it so difficult. And I also felt like, again, because it was a series and he was obligated to write it, that he was just writing it to get it out of the way. The time and effort and love that is in My Heart is a Chainsaw wasn't present in the final installment of the trilogy, and left a really bad taste in my mouth, and how I felt like I've wasted a bunch of time reading this trilogy to only be let down by the final third. You know, this went from being like a 5-star read as a group of 3 books to really dropping to like a 3-star experience when the first 2/3 were amazing and it couldn't stick the landing. In fact, I think it butchered the landing, and it just made me very, very upset. But then you have series like Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare. I love this book. This is one of the best, campiest slasher books I have ever read. It is technically YA for some reason. I'm not really sure how that is, because all of the books are very, very gory. And they're also dealing with a lot of adult topics, but this one was fun. And again, it was written as a standalone novel. Adam Cesare didn't know he was going to be turning it into a series, but he did leave it open-ended, kind of the way that like the Friday the 13th movies are kind of all open-ended. And he decided to turn it into a series. Now, I really thought he was going to take the direction of like a traditional slasher franchise and just kind of make these like really fun, whimsical, over-the-top slasher stories in all of the books that followed. But the only book in the series that actually is a campy slasher is book 1. Book 2 to me was an absolutely huge, 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 huge disappointment. All of the fun of teenagers being stalked by a slasher clown in the small town of Kettle Springs, Missouri, was thrown out the window so that Adam Cesare could use book 2 to make a very, very, very heavy political statement on society today, especially in this current political election world. It was very, very, very much blatantly paralleled to January 6th, and I thought it was not fun. It wasn't fun. It became very, very serious. I didn't love the way he handled some of our main characters either, and it just didn't feel like a slasher anymore. It just felt like a horror story inspired by really scary events that are happening in the real world, and then just throwing clowns on top of them. So I really didn't like book 2. However, I felt compelled to read book 3 because I've already dedicated time to book 1 and 2, and I kind of said to myself, if I don't like book 3, that's it. But I just finished book 3. I'm going to be doing a whole review on that. Or I might have already done the review. I don't know. I'm filming this before, but the review might already be up. But I actually did find book 3 kind of scary. But again, it very much bordered on politics. And it wasn't a slasher at all. And I just really hated, in the way that I hated the conclusion of My Heart is a Chainsaw, that series, I really hated what he did with our main characters. There's a lot of main characters that are just completely absent. A lot of new characters that are fully introduced. And I don't necessarily love how he handled it. I thought it was an interesting take to really focus on the kind of like culty nature of some political climates. And he's very much taking a lot of inspiration from like Waco and The Wicker Man, as well as like Jonestown. So again, very much drawing inspiration from real life, but it just lost all of the fun charm of the first book. And I feel like I'm just going to keep reading these novels, hoping that I get the charm of the first book back in like, I don't know, Clown in Cornfield Part 9, and I'm just never going to get it because none of these books have followed the tone that the first one set. And that really disappoints me. And it's just something that I feel like happened with the Indian Lake trilogy as well as Clown in a Cornfield, that they can't keep the tone up that made the series so intriguing for me to actually want to embark on that journey in the first place. And I just feel like the more I read series, the more I get disappointed if it doesn't feel cohesive. Because again, I'm looking at series as if they are like just one elongated book at this point, that I'm just reading over different chunks of time. And when the tones shift so drastically, I don't love it, and it doesn't resonate with me anymore. We then have a problem with something like Legacy Witches by Cass Kay. This is another book I got in Twisted Retreat. Did not realize it was part of a series, though I do love how beautiful my edition is. And I loved this book. I thought it was so fun. It was so campy. It reminded me a lot of Darcy Coates, and again, kind of like Halloween Town. This is about a witch in Salem where real witch covens are operating behind the scenes. Our main character is very much against what these covens do, but is forced to come back into this witchy society after the death of her mom. It's a really fun, really interesting read. Now, the reason this is on this list is because this is a this is a series I'm excited to see where it goes, and I wasn't disappointed in book 2. However, book 2 was filler. It was an entire like 300 pages of filler setting up for the next book. And it got me very excited for everything, but I don't know if I needed 300 pages of filler when I would rather have just had 2 kind of meatier books to go 1 and 2 with. Like, I really didn't get much out of book 2 apart from being prepared for a book that I probably won't be reading for like a year. And that's a bummer because I really, really love the characters in this book. I really, really love reading about this world and the kind of fantastical version of Salem that Cass Kay has created. I think it's really, really cool and interesting, and it reminds me a lot of like The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and I just never want to put it down when I have them. But I'm also just now kind of watching filler episodes of TV. That's what it feels like kind of like the X-Files monster of the week versus the overarching story, except the like monster of the week in book 2 didn't really do it for me. It just kind of again laid groundwork for a larger monster that is to come, and I hated that. And I didn't even hate the book. The book was fine. I knew more is going to come, and I don't really want to wait for it. And then last but not least, we have a book like The Whispering Dead by Darcy Coates. Now, I love this series. This is probably my favorite series. I will read all of it. But that's because Darcy Coates is one of my favorite authors, and these are very easy and fast books to read. And Darcy Coates does something that I really, really, really appreciate that a lot of these other books don't do. A lot of these books just assume that the reader remembers everything from the previous books. Darcy Coates is so good at making sure that all of the characters and all of the situations that get brought up in her later books get kind of like these like nice mini summaries to remind the reader who and what is happening. And maybe I'm just a bad reader for not remembering everything, but I read a lot of books and I don't always remember every single detail, especially when we're about to get book 5 on The Whispering Dead. Like, I've read all 4 of the books that have come out so far, and luckily Darcy Coates is really good at releasing one of these every single year, so that definitely helps that I haven't had to have like some elongated wait period. And every book, the characters get more and more and more in depth, kind of like you would get with the different seasons of varying TV shows. But I love this. This is the story of Kira, who wakes up with absolutely no memory. She's being chased in the woods by a group of bad guys and stumbles into this tiny town, finds refuge with a priest, and then is trying to figure out who she is, why these men are after her, when she discovers that she can also speak with ghosts, and she works to try and help the dead move on. It took like 3 books to really get into the who are these people that are chasing her, whereas the first books were her just kind of discovering her power, but they're still very fun. And again, going back to that kind of monster of the week moment, like book 2 is definitely more of a filler book, book 3 is kind of a filler book, book 4 is not, but they're still really, really engaging in a way that I don't feel cheated reading those stories. But Darcy Coates, honestly, is the only author in this whole stack that to me has stayed consistent with every single one of the books in her story or in her series. It always feels to me like it's the same large book that I'm reading, and I'm just reading it again slowly over long periods of time. There's no real tonal shift. It's like she knows exactly what's happening from the beginning. And I think originally when this was released that she was going to make it a trilogy. I don't know if it's going to be beyond 5 books now, but I'm very, very happy and very satisfied with this series. But out of all of the other series that I have here in front of me, this is the only one that I can really say that about. I literally discovered while I was filming this video that the Brier Dark book had come out. I've been checking that like every 2 months, and the marketing on that was terrible because I literally had no idea that it came out, which is a bummer. But yeah, series are just one of those things that I feel like become very, very difficult for me to invest my time in, and then 5 out of 6 times I'm not always sure if it was worth investing my time in. And so that is why I don't like series. And it was kind of a long rambling video, but I just wanted to put this out here because I say all the time that I don't like reading series, and then all year I've been like reading books in various series, so I just wanted to make this video so you guys know where I'm coming from when I say that stuff and why. But yes, I am still hopefully going to try and finish all of the series that I have here, though I don't know if I have any plans of starting any new ones anytime soon, unless I once again get blindsided by a series that I didn't realize was the book 1 of a series. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah.